The Texans travel to Baltimore, a place where we've never seen a win, hoping to get one and keep their playoff hopes alive. We'll talk about that and more on this edition of The Bullpen.
To throw the punches away. He floats one wide open, and there he goes. Tagged down for a Texan touchdown.
Hello and welcome to The Bullpen. As always, I am James Roy, and with me is Tom Chavarria. Tom, how are you doing today?
I cannot believe in the year 2025 we're talking about playoff hopes alive a quarter of the season in.
Yet here we are doing it. And I mean, honestly, if you were doing the intro, you probably wouldn't have even mentioned it.
Not now.
My discussion point if the Texans had done better to start the season and had won literally any of the 3 games prior, playoff hopes would be so far out of the discussion for me. But I like I said during our recap of the last matchup against the Titans, I think that the winning this matchup could very well make the difference, like between that, because the difference between going into this bye week 1-4 versus 2-3 is massive. I don't think anyone can deny that, but maybe you will. I don't know. You will? Okay. Well, we'll talk about that more.
I mean, think about it. They could go, and this, I don't think this is unrealistic, but they could go, they start 1-4, right? They could go 9-4, 9-3, 9-3, and make the playoffs. Win the division, 9-3.
I mean, it is
I don't
possible.
think that's a crazy number. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's a lot of wins, but at the same time, I'm like, well, I'm not saying you got to run the table.
They could win 9 games in a row and set themselves up in a lot better position. It's been done before by a team wearing this not exact same uniform, but a similar uniform. In 20, I always get mixed up. Was it 2018 or 2019 where they ran the 9-game win streak? I think it was 2019 because they won 9 in a row and then they went into to the playoffs against the Bills and won that game, if I remember correctly. But I think it may have been 2018 because that was when they started 0-3. So I'd have to look it up. Either way, it was Deshaun Watson firing off some of the best football that a Texans quarterback's ever played, which is a shame to say given Watson's history, but it's not false. So yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible. And in the coming weeks, we could see this Texans team play so well that, like, I'm not even talking about the playoffs because it's not a concern anymore. But like I said in previous episodes, history, probabilities, all dance in my head as I think about the Texans' playoff hopes. And so the fact that they're on my mind this early in the season is to show how bad the offense has been relative to what I guess some people, myself included, probably expected it to be to start. But let's get into this Ravens matchup. We'll start with the key matchups. First things first, and I know this is listed as a later talking point, but these bullet points on the side are just to guide my mind as I try and guide the discussion. So we'll just go into it right now. Lamar Jackson, as far as we know, this was recorded earlier in the week, so it could have been a non-event, in which case you're about to hear us ramble about something that doesn't even matter anymore. But assuming that it's still an issue, Lamar Jackson's hamstring got beat up in this game against the Chiefs. He left the game, did not come back. How likely do you think, or how severe is it? I don't know. But which would you rather have happen? Would you rather the Texans play a team with Lamar Jackson coming off of a hamstring injury, or a team with Cooper Rush, at quarterback?
So I talked about a little bit of the last show. I'm going to stick to my guns. I'm going to say that I would rather have a less than 100% Lamar Jackson who is limited in his mobility and hope that he has to beat you from the pocket as a quarterback, as opposed to Cooper Rush that is more of a pocket quarterback that, doesn't rely on his legs, that is going to systematically, hit his checkdowns and make the right reads. Where I think Lamar, I don't want to take anything away from him, right? I mean, he's on some of my fantasy teams. I'm not saying he's a running back that throws the football, but I am going to say that his mobility is elite. His quarterbacking skills are good. So, where I would be more fearful of Lamar if he was whole, I really don't fear Lamar, the pocket quarterback.
I agree with you. I think that, and to say this, like, to go a step further with your, description, he's a good quarterback. I think that his quarterbacking abilities are elevated by his mobility, by his ability to move around. I think that he goes from being a good quarterback to a great quarterback through those. And so if those are in any way, inhibited, it would create an opportunity. And looking at it, like, one of the big concerns I think a lot of Texans fans have is that Derrick Henry's on this team. I don't know if you're familiar, anyone listening, with the Derrick Henry 200-yard game. It's up there with the T.Y. Hilton 200-yard game in terms of things that will traumatize any Texans fan that's been watching the team for the past decade. And so having him come to town, I think I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place with this question, because if Cooper Rush plays, the Ravens will likely lean on Derrick Henry, which means that we could very easily see the Derrick Henry 200-yard game. On the other side, if Lamar Jackson is deemed healthy enough to play, I can't imagine that his mobility would be so severely impacted that it wouldn't be a factor. So then now you would not only have to account for Derrick Henry running the ball, but if Lamar Jackson does have the ball, the Texans have already shown this season that their ability to contain is not great. Granted, it was Baker Mayfield, not known to run, so they weren't really tracking that. If we look historically, since we're making a lot of comparisons to the 2023 season, since we long for that, since it was the best season in recent memory, when the Texans played the Ravens, then they held Lamar Jackson to basically neutralized him. They just couldn't produce on offense well enough to, step in and take advantage of that. So this is a defense that's still very good, still top tier. And so if this defense is worth its salt, I agree with you that I'd probably rather have Lamar because I know they can stop him. But I'm kind of 50-50 on it, because as much as Derrick Henry is a problem, if the game's close, which this defense has shown to be able to do, Cooper Rush will eventually be called upon to throw the ball. And I think this defense eats him alive if he's called upon to do that. So it is a big if, but if he's in the game and he's called upon to throw, he's not as good of even with Lamar Jackson being hobbled, Cooper Rush is not as good of a quarterback as he is. And that definitely gives this defense an opportunity. Now, we've looked at this season, the opportunities that we've seen for this Texans team so far. The most notable is that the Tampa Bay offensive line was basically busted beyond repair. And that did not stop Tampa Bay's offense from moving the ball against this defense. So all these hypotheticals, all these, this would look really good. What it comes down to is that I think this defense is really good. And it's not that I don't care who's on the field. It's that I just think I want it to be known sooner so that they can be prepared for whatever. The more time they spend splitting their preparation between if it's Lamar, if it's Cooper, I think is detrimental to this defense's ability to be ready for the game. So that's kind of where I'm at on it. But entering this matchup, Lamar Jackson's obviously the primary discussion. We've kind of touched on Derrick Henry, but another part of it is Zay Flowers. How do you think the potential of Lamar or Cooper being the quarterback affects Zay Flowers in this whole discussion?
I truly feel like all the wide receivers are upgraded with Cooper Rush being under center. And that's, again, I know it sounds like a slight to Lamar. I just think that if he's not, like you pointed out, like if you know the type of Lamar you're going to get, he's easier to prepare for versus the guy that can do it all. And, all right, I want to play a defense where, okay, I'm going to have him pick and read and I'm going to play more zone and I'm going to try to really force him to try to throw the football. Well, then he just runs it down your throat. But if Lamar is going to be hobbled at all to where he's not able to do that, at least not to the ability that you see, like where he's, a second running back where he's averaging, 50, 60 yards, something like that. I feel like then you can make him a pocket passer and you can force him to try to understand your disguised defenses and maybe generate some turnovers where you normally wouldn't, because if he doesn't see it right away, he's just going to take off because he has that ability. Where Cooper Rush, I think that's his game. That's his MO is being able to, understand where mismatches are and find soft spots in zones and really game manage for something like that, where I think he would benefit, a team that wants to lean on Derrick Henry a ton, where I don't know that Lamar is going to just all of a sudden decide, well, I'm not 100%. I'm going to just, turn around and hand the ball off. I think the competitor in him would still want to go out and try to go win a football game, which to me, at less than 100%, is advantage of the Texans defense.
Yeah, I mean, I feel you on this, but one thing that I will say personally, in my opinion, is that when I look at Cooper Rush, I see a quarterback that's more comparable to Davis Mills. And so when I keep that in mind,
we like Davis though.
I mean, I think Davis Mills is a better quarterback than Cooper Rush, but that's to say that if Davis Mills was to come in for Lamar Jackson, I feel a lot better about the Texans' chances of winning than if even hobbled with this hamstring injury. I feel a lot better about the Texans' chances of winning against a Davis Mills than Lamar Jackson. But the logic in me thinks that Lamar Jackson being hobbled affects his game enough that maybe that's a better opportunity than having, say, Davis Mills, or in this case, Cooper Rush, play quarterback. So that's what makes me kind of halfway in between on this discussion, and it's tough to commit to like one train. There's a lot of merit to each thought, and so I've obviously committed to the Lamar Jackson hobbled would be a better target. And like I said, my draw for that is history and looking at how Lamar Jackson performed against the Texans when healthy in 2023. So that's what makes it a little easier for me to take that side of things. But looking at overall this matchup as a whole, these are two teams that are 1-3. There's a lot of different ways you could view this, but one thing that I expressed, when I saw that the Ravens were playing the Chiefs, and the Texans were 0-3, I made the statement, this very well could be a matchup where the Texans will be 1-3 going into Baltimore against a Ravens team that's looking for a get-back game. Do you think that the sequence of events leading into this week could prove to make this matchup more difficult for the Texans? The fact that the Ravens are 1-3, the fact that they are in desperate need of a win, in the same way the Texans are. Do you think that tips the scales in their favor? Do you think that maybe the Texans being in that same spot maybe neutralizes it? What are your thoughts?
To me, the best ability is availability. And we saw that. We talked about the Astros early on or on the last show. They were desperate for wins going down the stretch and had some of their guys there, but were missing key guys. And for me, if you're missing the guys that got you there, it's going to be hard to do it, even though you absolutely need it, must win. So I feel like Baltimore is going to be in the same boat. If their defense is limited by the guys that aren't available, we talked about it, Roquan Smith, Matabuke, aren't they still missing Kyle? What's his name?
I think Hamilton's out.
Hamilton, yeah. Aren't they missing Kyle Hamilton? So like their defense is severely limited. Now you're talking about their offense being severely limited. Absolutely, they're going to play to win the game. I don't see them not showing up to play to win the game. But that does not mean that just because they need to win it means that they have the pieces to do it. If those guys are going to be out, I think the Texans are going to have a really good shot to go into Baltimore and do something they've never done.
I agree. I think that there's a lot of things that are building to it. To me, the discussion point that stands out is what the Texans have been this season. So you can look at history, and I have looked at that, and that definitely affects my train of thought. But I think the real problem is that the Texans would need an offensive coordinator who, in his experience, has figured out how to run the Texans offense and knows how to get the best out of it. If we were coming into this game in week 10 and Nick Caley had shown over the first 9 weeks of the season, hey, Texans offense is here. I know we had a rough start, but CJ and I have this down, and this is going to be a lethal offense that's a threat. Or even a middle of the road offense, doesn't even have to be like one of the best, just top half of the league. Then I'd come into this with that similar thought to you, but the defense on the Ravens end is hurt, but this offense, spent 3 quarters figuring out how to play football against the Titans. So like, I'll believe it when I see it. And I am thankful that the Texans get the opportunity to play in a matchup where the defense is hurt to this level to give them a shot at winning it, or at playing at a level that could win the game. But it's one of those things where I've seen it in spurts. I've seen parts. I said it last week. One of the important things to contextualize the Texans win is that it was against the Titans, and that a lot of their scoring, 20 whole points of it, came in the fourth quarter in a very short stretch of time. So they did produce. It did happen at the NFL level, and it is a step forward. The next step forward is going into Baltimore and doing it against the defense while hurt is actually still a high level defense that could actually present a challenge, and we could see the Texans overcome it to show that they are for real. So I do think it's possible, and I hate sounding pessimistic. I know that it's not my typical shade of speech.
This is not your typical shade of speech based on the way you attacked it, because you basically discredited the last thing you saw from the Texans and went over it going, well, the first 3 quarters, they were awful, but the last quarter they played football, they were really good. So what's to say that they're not going to continue on from that last? No. Bypass that fourth quarter. Let's talk about the first 3 quarters, which is a deviation from what you're used to, sir. Normally you would be on like the last thing they showed us, we should believe in the last thing we saw. The last thing we saw the Texans do was go out and score 3 touchdowns with a dynamic running back and a quarterback that was making quick decisions, trusting in his checkdowns, and making changes at the line of scrimmage to find mismatches.
I think the big thing, right? And I think what's going to change moving forward that'll get me back into, like you're saying, that lens is that we're going into Baltimore. I think that, and most Texans fans, I think, would agree that like you see the Ravens on the schedule and you just kind of go, okay, well, we better win the other ones because that one's probably a loss. And that was a big talking point throughout the offseason. I think we had it. I've seen a lot of people have that where they're like, these first 5 games, the Texans need to win against these other teams because that's possible, and winning in Baltimore is not. Now, it is possible to win in Baltimore. It just hasn't happened. So there we go. There's me finding the optimistic. Instead of working from what hasn't happened, I'll work from what can happen, which is that the Texans can go into Baltimore and win this game. So with that, we'll transition into our score predictions. But did you have something to say there? Sorry.
Before that, ladies and gentlemen, I would just like to let you all know that this season, the theme of the bullpen will be James Roy's PTSD, because he has a show to show. It's like, the Texans have never won the division 3 years in a row. PTSD. We cannot win it 3 years in a row. And I'm going to say it, so I can't say it anymore because it hasn't happened. Fast forward to this coming week. The Texans have never won in Baltimore, and PTSD says we can't win there because we've never done it. And I can't root for it, sort of, until it happens.
For risk of violating HIPAA, I am officially diagnosed with PTSD. So, it is a real thing that I have. So, and the Texans have given me most of it. So, I mean, yeah, I all throughout my entire time growing up, I've been good at math, but I've really loved history. And so a lot of my approach, while analytical and technical in a lot of ways, is also very informed by the past, because I am a firm believer that history gives us the roadmap for what's ahead 9 times out of 10. So if the Texans want to break the precedent and they want to rewrite history and give me a new piece of information to go on that can inform what will happen in the future, I'd love to see them do it. In order for them to win the Super Bowl, they would have to do it, and they've never done it. So historically speaking, I could say the Texans will never win a Super Bowl because they never have. But I'm holding out that hope that I throw that historical precedent out the window, because I believe the Texans are going to win a Super Bowl. But I do, week to week, and looking at like how they function, like I said, I feel like this week, it being the Ravens is what's really tainting my typically optimistic tone with the Texans, along with the fact that they just did not play super well at all in weeks 1 through 3. So with that in mind, let us get into the score predictions. Tom, I want to hear what you have to say. I said last week, I think that was the last week was probably the last time for a minute that I would pick the Texans to win a game. And spoiler alert, I don't think I'm going to predict a win this week. Which the first time I ever didn't predict a win for the Texans, they went out and won it. So, maybe that'll happen. I'm trying to work through. I'm trying to, work some magic and some superstition over it to make it happen. But I'm interested to see how you view it, because I don't know if you're in that same boat as I am.
Not at all. I truly believe that, the people that are out, if they are out, it's going to impact the game. Like if this was a Baltimore Ravens whole, I think the line in the game was like 9.5 points. Like they were 9.5 point favorites. If we're talking about Lamar, if we're talking about Matabuke, if we're talking about, Kyle Hamilton, if we're talking about all the pieces, Roquan Smith, they're 9.5 point favorites. You take those guys out, and I truly feel like the Texans can go get a dub. I really am really excited about what I saw in the fourth quarter. I think it is something that the Texans can build on. I think they needed this. Like you ever get that feeling whether it's playing a sport or in life where it's like everything's bad until that one good thing happens, and all of a sudden it's like, well, all right, maybe it's not so bad. And then you start stacking up stuff, whether it's like I was in a slump as a hitter on the softball team. I get that one knock that just rolls down the third baseline. It's not sexy at all, but I got the knock out of the way.
Got on base.
That's it. And then all of a sudden, all right, now the ball doesn't seem like something I can't hit. The field doesn't seem so small. You're allowed to like relax. I really feel like the Texans got that in the fourth quarter, and this offense is literally the only thing stopping this team from being 4-0, in my opinion, because the defense has been lights out all season long. I know some Robert Land in his show talked about the turnovers and the sacks and how they don't have the gaudy numbers that we thought they would have. The only stat that I care about with respect to the defense is that scoreboard. And when that scoreboard is under 21 points, I feel like you're supposed to be able to win every game. Like 21 points is kind of the standard in the league now. And the Texans have held every team for the most part. I mean, they gave away a touchdown under 21 points. So they're one of the top probably 5-10 teams in the league.
They were top 5 going into this week with an average of 17 points. So allowing 0 probably held them in that, area.
And then again, okay, they've seen some really good teams. LA Rams, the Puka Nacua. I don't know if you've been following anybody other than the Texans. That dude is a monster. He just went for, I think, 11 receptions and 170 yards and a touchdown against the Colts. Absolutely torched them alive. You talk about that Tampa Bay team. Egbuka, he might win Rookie of the Year. Like they are nasty. Like you look at all the teams that they've had to go through. The Jacksonville game is probably the outlier for me. I really feel like I watched that game and there's just really no reason they didn't go out and win. Jacksonville was allowed to hang around long enough, and if they'd done a better job on offense to put them away, they'd probably win that game. But the other two, they had some really good players. Bucky Irving had a great game yesterday too. So I look at those teams as a whole and go, they could be 4-0 and we'd have a totally different tone. One drive this way, one drive that way in all 3 games, all lost 1 score.
You're not gonna like what I have to say on that, but I mean, I felt like even with as close as the Texans were to winning those games, if the coin flips and they don't fumble the ball while driving against the Rams on that final drive, if they don't, if they sack Baker Mayfield on 4th and 10, if they don't fumble the ball and then throw an interception on 6, in rapid succession against the Jaguars, they win. The product that was put on the field outside of those plays remains the same. And I think the frustration level, while it is less, like we're not going to be talking about playoff hopes, the Texans would be 4-0. I think that the frustration level with the way the offense is played, and this is something I can say with certainty because the Texans, when they were winning last season, were winning in a similar fashion. And while you obviously have consistently shown that a win is a win, it doesn't have to be sexy. It is what it is. I've been pretty consistent, at least from 2024 onward, with the thought process that eventually the offense is going to be expected to produce something. And if they haven't, consistently produced at any level, then how can we expect them to do it in the future? And so the way the offense has produced so far, like there would still be that discussion of, can Nick Caley figure it out? Like the offense, sure, it put up a touchdown, against the Rams at the last minute, but there was like 3/4 of football where they did not play well. I mean, so to me, the discussion point of, the Texans fans as in general would probably feel better about the Texans being 4-0, but as a more analytical fan, I would be excited about that development, but I would be closely monitoring the offense, and I would be voicing a very strong dissent to what has happened on offense and be shouting from the mountain. I'd be the Paul Revere of running through the streets of Houston screaming, can Nick Caley figure it out? He needs to get this offense going if we're going to win. But to be fair, the reason that the urgency is there now is because the Texans didn't win those first 3 games. So now that's why my discussion points have shifted to playoff hopes and the need to win now in order to create the odds to be able to make the playoffs. Whereas that's not the discussion point of playoff hopes and odds would be dead in the water if the Texans were 4-0. It would just be about becoming the contender they're looking like, is I guess what would be the short of it.
I just don't understand that logic. I mean, there was a game that was just played on Sunday Night Football where it ended in a 40-40 tie. Like, do you feel like if they would have like won 13-10, you think they're going, well, the offense stinks, and we don't know if could they score more points? Absolutely. Would you sit there and critique them? Yes, because that's what we do. That we're looking for perfection, even though it's not attainable. But to win the game is the ultimate goal. If you won a Super Bowl 9-0, are you going to go, well, I can't really celebrate the Super Bowl. They didn't score any touchdowns. Texans stink. I'm downtown in the streets for 9-0. Absolutely. I don't understand the logic where it's like, nope. I need 3 scores. I need touchdowns. Nico's got to go for a hundo. Woody Marks, he's got to give me a hundo on the ground, or I don't want it.
I'm not a stat sheet watcher, Tom. So I to speak to my own feelings about it, this Texans team, put up stats in some ways over the course of those games, but I wouldn't be looking at the stat sheet. I watched every snap of all of those games, and I can tell you that there was approximately 1 drive per game, give or take, where consistently throughout the entire drive, the Texans produced a coherent offense that was consistent and looked like a team that would be able to go toe-to-toe with a giant. So to look at your reference of like a 40-40 tie between the Packers and Cowboys, those are 2 teams that have offenses that have produced at that level. It's not ideal to see a tie. And I think the reason that is different for the Texans is that this Texans defense is elite. So if the offense, I'm not asking the offense to move mountains. I'm not asking them to put up 40 points a game. I am asking them to be better, and the problem right now is that they were producing prior to this week 12.5 points a game. They were bottom 5 in the league in that. So like I referenced earlier, they're top 5 in the league in points allowed, and they're bottom 5 in points produced. Now I haven't looked at the new stats for this week, but we took a huge step in the right direction this week. So like there's reason for optimism. There's reason to look ahead and be like, okay, maybe it's starting to get figured out, but based off those first 2 weeks, let's say we give a touchdown each week to the Texans on that ups their average to about the same as they're allowing, which is still not good because the Texans defense is considered good for allowing that. So it would be better, but I think it's middle of the league, if I remember correctly, looking at those numbers, which is what I'm asking of the Texans. So those touchdowns would make the difference score-wise, but if you change the results of that one drive, you still see the Texans. And to be fair, the play we're looking at for the change in result on the Texans side against the Buccaneers is a defensive play. Their score wouldn't change, so it wouldn't even go up the full amount to 17 points per game. The Texans would still be down closer to 12 to 15 points a game if we give them the points they would need to win the games that they ended up losing. So I mean, I get it. It's a thing where that, you look at it and you're like, okay, well, they won, whatever. But in my mind, the Texans offense still would need to be better. One thing you can say to it, to speak from your point of view, is that the first two teams were really good teams defensively. So like, I think maybe there would be a little bit more, excuses. I don't know if that's the right word, but a bit more of giving credit where credit's due and maybe not being as hard on the offense. But after the Jacksonville loss, like even if the Texans won that game, the offensive production against a team that is not very good would be hard to justify, and it would lead to some. I'll give you this. I don't think we're talking about firing Nick Caley if the Texans are 4-0. I think we're still highly critical of the offense, and we're looking. And I think the Bobby Slowick 2.0, notion that's been thrown around would still be a thing. So.
I don't understand, and this is my last whatever on it. I don't understand what you would want, like to have the elite defense and to have the elite offense. Yeah, is the dream, but how often do you see that? Normally, there's just not enough. You just can't assemble enough talent. Now there's been some outliers, right? The Eagles were monsters on defense, and Saquon Barkley carried them to a Super Bowl last year pretty much by himself, and the tush push. Those two things equaled enough offense. But they had games where they sputtered. Like we're looking at we're looking ahead to a Ravens game off the heels of a 26-0 win, and going, I don't think they can score enough points when they just proved they could score enough points. Now
against the Titans,
very
important context.
No, absolutely. But I mean, if you're saying like, oh no, they got to give me like 30 every game, I think that's unrealistic. The same, and to kind of further my point, the same Green Bay team that just scored 40 points to tie the Cowboys, I think scored like 10 or 12 or whatever when they lost to the Browns. They were inept. And it just happens that way. Cleveland's got a decent defense too. I mean, they've got great players too. And you hope that you win those games so that you can turn around and go take advantage of lesser defenses later. It's kind of like the thing in baseball, right? Where it's like you take care of home and you go 500 on the road, you're a playoff team. I feel that way in the same semblance with football. If you score just enough points to win football games and your defense is elite, you're a good football team. I think that if the Texans win a 15-9 Super Bowl one year, I'm not going to care that they were inept and scored one touchdown. Like, I'm not. I'm going to say, we're going downtown. It's a parade. I'm going to get blackout drunk. No, I'm not going to do that. But, that's the logic I have when I look at it. Would I want them to be the greatest show on turf and average 40? Yes. Do you know when the Cowboys were like doing that with Tony Romo? They were losing games because their defense was atrocious, and people blamed Tony Romo for them not being able to score the winning touchdown. So it's kind of like it's a weird, like, I know I can't have it all. I feel like people want it all. I know I can't have it all. If you give me just enough offense and elite defense, I'll take it.
All right. Yeah. And I mean, football's a pickle game. This is the Texans defense as a top 5 defense gave up a lot of points to the Vikings. I mean, last season. So it could go either way, but the difference is that I have confidence in this Texans defense to bounce back and produce. And that I guess that trust hasn't been earned by the Texans offense. So I guess that's where I'm coming from. But did you actually drop your score prediction? I can't recall if you said.
I did not.
The score is going to be. So what do you think the score is going to be?
We got off into the tangent. So for me, you have to this is my new theory with the Texans until they change it. And this is as much James Roy-esque as I can be. They're going to kick 3 field goals every game. So I'm like 9 plus however many touchdowns I think they can score. So to me, this time I feel like we're going to get 2 touchdowns. Give me 23-14 Texans. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's good. I want to keep it close.
That's good.
I've already said I'm not going to take the Texans. And in some way I'm kind of hoping that makes the Texans win, if that makes it feel any better. And with that means there won't be a storybook ending. So I'll just go through and say what my prediction is. If I'm giving a prediction right now, I'm probably going in a similar vein to you, but I'll give the Ravens 23 and I'll give the Texans 17. I do think that they will produce some. They've progressed as an offense. It's tough to believe that they wouldn't produce at all, but I just don't know if the offense has progressed to the level it needs to. And this this is hinging on. I mean, obviously, I think this prediction is based off of a more healthy Ravens than we might see in this game. So we'll see how that goes. I mean, assuming that I could take the Texans if we assume that Lamar Jackson's hamstring significantly affects his mobility. I could flip that score prediction and give it to the Texans, but
I'm betting on that, by the way. I'm betting that he plays but is limited, and they're all over him the entire game.
But I'm going to take the Ravens 23-17 as it stands. On that note, Tom, do you have any final thoughts before we bring this thing to a close?
I'm really excited about this offense. I think you have found a running back in Woody Marks. I really think that the thought that, well, we don't know. I mean, he could regress, but I don't see it. Dude, post game seemed really humble, really like, the guy's makeup. I think that matters a lot. He really didn't celebrate a lot. You saw him in the end zone. He didn't look like a guy that, was like all about himself. So I think that's a D'Amico guy, kind of just quiet, goes about his work, which means D'Amico guys get more playtime. Tommy Togiai, D'Amico guy, more playtime, which, by the way, we have not talked about him. Tommy Two-Tone Togiai needs to play more. Love that guy. Tons of energy.
I'm hoping he can step up and help stop Derrick Henry up the middle. So,
yep.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. You go.
No, I mean, I just really feel like this team is starting to click. I think that first win was a big thing to get the monkey off their shoulder. It's bound to happen in Baltimore, folks. The notion that they haven't won there, so they can't, it doesn't work unless you don't want to see them win. If I was a Ravens fan, that would be my logic. Oh, we're going to win because they've never beat us here. No matter who plays, they just never beat us here. So my logic is the other way. Like, we're due. It's time to happen. Super Bowl, Baltimore win, New England win, Kansas City win. We're due for all of those.
I'm ready for it. So I'll receive that. Give it to me. Yeah, that's my final thought is let's go get a dub in Baltimore. It's got to happen eventually. Thanks for tuning into the bullpen. As always, I have been James Roy. You can find me at James Roy NFL wherever you get your social media. Tom is TC Tom1 on Instagram and Third Coast Tom on Twitter. And we are the bullpen, a veteran-run Texans podcast that's probably the best at that in terms of that category. No official stats to confirm, just feelings. And we are the bullpen. Thanks for tuning in. As always, stay classy, Houston, and vamos Texans. Thanks for tuning into The Bullpen, a Texans podcast. Please like, comment, subscribe, and follow along for more Texans talk from The Bullpen.
Take the handoff. Stroud looking. Stroud. End zone.